children. I said don't go near him. Tick at the black heart man. Children.
So, greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey and from me. Today, I am going to be covering two subjects, basically. The first one is at the request of a former senior member of the royal household, who some weeks ago actually asked me if I could simply point out to people what the royal family is about, what their purpose is, what their modus operandi is, how they go about things, etc. Because there is the feeling that many people looking in from the outside do not actually understand the purpose of the royal family or the royal household. And they seem to think that it's entertainment or that it's what it isn't. So that's the first thing to cover. And the second thing that I'm going to cover is the input of one of the most eminent psychiatrists stroke psychoanalysts in the world, who I have been consulting for some time now about Harry and Meghan and their conduct, etc. And I'm going to say they because I don't want anybody to know whether it's a man or a woman. But they make the point that both Harry and Meghan's behavior, there's so much out there about them, and they, even in their Oprah interview, one doesn't, if one is a medical professional, really want to make a diagnosis, but there are indications. And so we will be going with the indications that are not a diagnosis. And it's really important that this terrain be covered, because amidst all of the furor and the chaos and the drama and the tremendous destructiveness and negativity is the possibility that we are dealing with two very, very disturbed individuals or disordered individuals who, in lay terms, we could say are really rather sick. And I think that is important to take on board, because it takes a lot of the sting out of their conduct and its destructiveness. And it also really, even, sick people deserve pity as well. It's not only well people. And when I say sick, I mean people who have a mental illness or who have a personality disorder. They are deserving of our pity as well. And I just make these points. So now, before plunging in though, I want to read out one or two very pertinent sayings. The first is from Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I would submit that 2 weeks ago, we were a lot closer to Martin Luther King's ideal than we have been since Oprah, Harry and Meghan played the race card. And as those of you who are aware of the fact that I'm Jamaican, and we in my family care about, and I'm now speaking about cousins of mine, not my siblings especially, but cousins and my extended family. And all of us care about positive race relations. And most Jamaicans care about positive race relations. Jamaica, even when I was a child, 60 years ago, was at the forefront of positive race relations. Hence why, for instance, there was the movie Jamaica Farewell, and there was that wonderful song by Harry Belafonte. In fact, two wonderful songs, Jamaica Farewell, which I've played in a previous video, and Brown Skin Gal, Stay Home and Mind Baby. Wonderful songs. I just want to make the point again that to me, race relations, harmonious race relations, are very important. And I am mindful of the fact that Martin Luther King is absolutely right. It's character, not color. Another saying is, the best way to stop racism is to stop talking about it. That's from Morgan Freeman. And I couldn't agree with him more. Every time you have a Meghan or an Oprah whipping up racial divisions and whipping up racial divisiveness by harping on race and trying to position one race in a preferential situation over another race, instead of everybody just being a person who is going to be judged on his or her conduct, performance, behavior, character. That's really what we need. Nowadays, especially in America, because this is not really true in England, nowadays we have a situation where certain black public figures are actually, by harping on color, not improving relations, but actually creating problems when there should be solutions instead of problems. I'm actually referring particularly to Oprah and to the Obamas. Oprah is the richest black woman on earth, I believe. Her career has been an outstanding success. She could not have achieved the success she did if she had not been embraced by white people who are in the majority in the United States of America. Her very success is an absolute refutation of the fact that her race has militated against her or has been a preventative to her success. The same thing is true of the Obamas. I am really slightly concerned when politicians or people with political agendas, for the enhancement of their positions and their power, play cards that are ultimately completely counterproductive to the objective that they have espoused. Racial harmony does not come about by constantly harping on the race card, the way they have done and are doing. Yes, it's made the Obamas a very great deal of money. It's giving Oprah, now that she's got more money than anybody can need in this lifetime or the next. It's giving her a platform and influence, a second life, another sort of career, more power, different sort of power. And Oprah then colludes with Meghan and that dolt Harry, who also, it has to be said, does enjoy the attention and the power that they feel they are getting from the displays of prejudice, which they have not suffered from, because Meghan and Harry have never been victims of racial prejudice, ever. Meghan passed for white for most of her life. Meghan, given a choice at university between a black sorority and the whitest of the white sororities, chose a white sorority. I don't think anything needs to be added to that. It speaks for itself. As lawyers would say, res ipsa loquitur. The fact speaks for itself. I have been asked to point out that Meghan and Harry, both of whom, by their own admission, have mental health issues, cannot and should not be treated as healthy, sane, unaffected, whose word should be accepted unquestioningly. Nobody's word, really, should be treated completely unquestioningly. But when it is apparent that people have mental health issues, you need to view their every action and every claim through the prism of a possible distortion of fact, by a perceived distortion of reality on their part. People who are mentally ill or have personality disorders do not look at reality the way the average, reasonably healthy individual does. Where we will see a benefit, they will see a disadvantage, if depending on what their problem is. Both Meghan and Harry play the victim card and wallow in their victimhood in a way that is so completely out of kilter with their positions and the privileges that they have. They are very adept at using their influence in such a way that the effect of their conduct is detrimental to others. According to the person to whom I spoke, Meghan's demeanor and conduct would suggest that she suffers from quite a pronounced degree of narcissism. If she does not suffer from narcissistic personality disorder, she suffers from such a degree of narcissism that it is beyond anything that is healthy or acceptable. She also exhibits antisocial traits. Antisocial personality disorder is more commonly known as sociopathy. And she may not be a sociopath. She may not have antisocial personality disorder, but she exhibits sufficient of the traits and characteristics of antisocial personality disorder in conjunction with narcissistic personality disorder, with one or two other little cocktails thrown in as well. A little bit of borderline here, I think, and I'm trying to remember what else I was told. But anyway, the point is she exhibits these traits. And therefore, it is a reasonable assumption to make that something is amiss in the way she perceives the realities that you and I would look at and come to a completely different conclusion. Harry and Meghan both evidently display pronounced paranoid tendencies. The supreme overimportance that they place upon themselves, and allied to that, looking for an injury everywhere, and interlocking with that is their need for sympathy, which is very much an antisocial trait. Then their desire for admiration. They are great humanitarians. They're going to be able to tell everybody what to do. This is all very narcissistic. But we need to remember something. And this is what has been driven home to me. People like that can't help the disordered way that they view life. Meghan is always speaking about seeing things through a lens. It would be more accurate to say that she sees things through the prism, a prism that distorts reality. She is tremendously overconfident. She is confident, but she is overconfident. Harry is tremendously aggressive. Both of them really have no filter in terms of, they have no compunction off the Oprah interview about damaging their loved ones and his country. This presents the royal family with a huge dilemma, because put yourself in their shoes. If the assessment of Harry and Meghan, that they are both really pretty sick individuals, is accurate, what does that mean where their loved ones are concerned? You see the difficulty of what the royal family is having to deal with. Because if you love somebody and they are sick, you may have to protect yourself against them, but you are going to try to take as compassionate a view of their misbehavior as you possibly can if you have a heart. Of course, it's easy for you and me and people who are not affected personally by them to say, oh, the Queen should put her foot down more firmly, Prince Charles should put his foot down more firmly. that comes with time. Now, I'm speaking from experience because I had a seriously disordered mother. And my father wasn't always Mr. Perfect either. And, you know, my siblings and I, had an awful lot to cope with, as indeed did my aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents. My poor grandmother, what a ringer my mother put her through. I mean, I can't tell you. So dreadful. But she loved her till she died. At this point, maybe I should touch upon a little bit about the role of the monarchy and the role of the sovereign. The Queen is the embodiment of nationhood. The royal family are her representatives, her extensions, so to speak. So we have the head of state and her extensions. We have the politicians elected. We have the civil service who deal with the politicians, and we have the courtiers who deal with the royal family. The royal family represents all the people in this country, even those who are anti-monarchist. The activities of the royal family are very carefully considered by the courtiers, the politicians, and the bureaucrats. And they step in wherever encouragement is required, or wherever the national interest that is apolitical or supra-political, which would be beyond politics, is concerned. So they will try to drum up trade, they will go on official visits, they will do perfunctory things like opening schools, all different sorts of things. Their diaries are set 6 months in advance normally. If, for instance, a member of the royal family is making a visit overseas, there is the understanding that all the other members of the royal family are quiet while that visit is taking place. The objectives of that visit have been carefully considered. That's why the visit takes place. No royal is supposed to step on the turf of another royal. No royal is supposed to steal the thunder of another royal, because they are all working in tandem for the national good. And if, say, the Prince of Wales is on a visit, the Duke of Cambridge is not going to do something that will steal his thunder, because the attention needs to stay on the Prince of Wales. This is very important because, first of all, Meghan and Harry did not want to fit in to that way of doing things. He used to fit in before Meghan came along and led him to believe that they were capable of being the hugest stars in the royal firmament, and that they should be leading with all news stories. And this has been one of the problems where Meghan and Harry and the royal family are concerned. Because Meghan and Harry, even while they were within the royal fold, were, especially Meghan, stealing the thunder of other royals. They have done it systematically while they were in the royal fold, and they have just gone hell for leather since they left the royal fold, with the result that practically each carefully calibrated visit or speech or function that the other royals is making to drive home a point for the national good, Harry and Meghan steal their thunder. Do you begin to see how destructive Harry and Meghan's behavior is, just in terms of public relations? Because Harry and Meghan, by stealing everybody else's thunder and having turned themselves into the news, swamping everybody else's activities, means that when the Queen makes a speech, as she did in terms of the vaccines, she gets, instead of a Clare run for a day, she gets a 2-hour maximum mention, while Harry and Meghan take over. So this is no way to run a monarchy. Also, it's no way for the monarchy to be able to function to the advantage of the people. Harry and Meghan do not seem to understand that royal families' activities are not for them to be the center of attention and for them to be the news story. A royal family's activities are for the causes that are being promoted by the royals to be the center of attention. To go back to Meghan and Harry's mental state, Harry has made, in the Oprah interview, some very disturbing comments. And he's made them elsewhere as well. I'll just take one or two. He claims, I was racist, but I didn't know it. And I was trapped, and I did not know it. Who told him that he was racist? And who told him that he was trapped? Meghan. This is very suggestive, whether Harry is aware of it or not, of the possibility that she has been brainwashing him. He also, on other occasions, has said things like, she educated him, and he tried to educate his father and brother, but they weren't having any of it. Quite right, too. I mean, we now come to a very interesting aspect of Meghan's identity. And this aspect is arrived at purely by what Meghan has said and her behavior. So I think we can take it as read that this is actually all very factual. It is interesting that Meghan has recently been playing the race card to the extent that she has been, because for most of her life, Meghan not only didn't play the race card, but she avoided the issue of race assiduously. This is by her own account. She states that she was confused about her identity. She didn't know where she fitted in. She has erased as many features of her heritage as she could, artificially. You could almost call it the racial version of cultural appropriation. She has done this by various beauty treatments and various forms of surgery. By her own admission, when she was growing up, she was very conflicted about her racial identity. The person to whom, the medical professional to whom I spoke, thinks that Meghan has an awful lot of unresolved self-hatred where her racial identity is concerned. And there is the possibility that she actually is playing out on an international scale internal conflicts and weaponizing internal conflicts that she suffers from. Was accurate in her admissions about the degree of insecurity, perplexity, and the inevitable self-hatred that goes along with some of the claims she was making. The fact that Meghan would do everything in her power to superficially erase the African part of her heritage, then embrace it for financial and material and worldly gain because it plays well, would actually not decrease her internal conflicts. It would increase them significantly, because she would on some level be absolutely enraged that she is having to get the attention that she wants, trading upon that part of herself which by her own admission, whether through word or deed, she was feeling so unaccepting of that she had to erase it. Very interesting point. Also shows that her internal conflicts are being externalized on a worldwide level. Frightening, actually, frightening. Meghan is at war with herself. Anybody who is embarrassed about aspects of their identity is going to resent being in that position. It's going to cause a lot of negative feelings. And if you press that button firmly enough, you're going to enrage the person. And Meghan displays tremendous rage. Tremendous rage. Harry also displays a lot of rage. Any professional looking at that interview with Oprah will be very disquieted. Most professionals looking at that interview with Oprah would, unless there's something very wrong with them, be very disquieted by the performance and the tremendous degree of discomfort and rage and resentment and envy, because what comes across evidently to serious professionals is that Meghan and Harry are both very angry, very envious, very deluded, actually, as to their position and very irresponsible. They have no care or scruple about making the most destructive remarks and comments and accusations against his loved ones. For a couple who are busy suing newspapers left, right, and centre, it is ironic that they would feel that they are entitled to privacy, that nobody is entitled to criticize them, but they are entitled to accuse loved ones of racism, uncaring, and a whole host of other diabolical failings. Evidently comes across quite strongly in medical terms is that Meghan has a very weak sense of self, to such an extent that she raids aspects of her late mother-in-law's identity, even though she's never met the woman, and that she then incorporates them into her arsenal or bag of tricks, whichever way you wish to put it. So on some level, by incorporating this alien being into herself, she is not being true to herself. She is being a phony, to put it in the vernacular, because you can't be true to yourself if you're pretending to be someone else or using or incorporating aspects of someone else's behavior that are basically alien to you, because they have to be alien because you didn't know the person. It's living a lie on a daily basis. It's selling yourself down the drain. On some level, you have to resent what you are doing to yourself. Do you see the dilemma of people who have embraced unhealthy ways of functioning? Because they are betraying themselves. Of course, if you are able to betray yourself, it's much easier to betray others as well. She also, by her own admission, is a practitioner of self-hypnosis. That works well if you are ill and want to be well, and you tell yourself, no, I'm not going to allow my anger to get the better of me. I am going to remain calm, or other techniques like that. However, if you are ill or not well, and you are incorporating other destructive tools to ply your trade, you are simply making yourself more unhealthy. Meghan evidently displayed that the professionals have picked up a great delight in that interview in duping. She evidently enjoys duping people, and she was really enjoying it. Both she and Harry, more her though, but both of them were painting pictures of themselves as victims. As it turns out, unfairly or untruly, but we'll get to that quickly. Both of them displayed micro expressions of anger that were made many assertions that in the vernacular we could call lies, but professionals would say were self-deluding claims, or that she's comforting herself by for instance, she claims that she got no guidance from anybody and that she was not told what to do. First of all, she was 36 years old. She's a fully formed, supposedly mature individual. If she didn't have the personality and the ability to join the royal family, she shouldn't have joined it. She shouldn't have pretended that she had the ability and that she was going to embrace the role. To that extent, she was deceiving them and possibly herself. I'm not sure about the latter, but I would certainly say where the former is concerned, she deceived them. She definitely, to my certain knowledge, was given guidance. The Queen got Samantha Cohen, who had been one of her private secretaries and wanted to resign, to extend her stay and work as the joint private secretary of Harry and Meghan, because Samantha Cohen is a much respected figure in the court. She also had Lady Susan Hussey, the Queen's good friend, who ironically enough was also delegated to assist Diana when Diana joined the royal family. So right there, Meghan's recollection is at best erroneous. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to break this up into two sections. Otherwise, it's going to be too long. But to try to wrap it up quite really in the middle of it, because there's so much ground to cover. Meghan is very adept in that interview, and most likely generally at the strategic ploy, at laying paper trails, at calculating like a chess master. If I write a letter to X, I can down the line use that to prove how innocent I was. It's a big point in the interview of writing letters to the royal family, saying how eager she was to be used by them. Then made sure that she wasn't used by them, that she used them, because that's what she's doing now. But somebody who is as manipulative as Meghan would appear to be and who is as adept at laying the ground for her to strategically down the line exonerate herself for an action that she had most likely decided at the very outset she would do. It's really very clever. She is very clever. It's also very indicative of a type of personality that I certainly wouldn't want to have anything to do with. And I have seen my mother do things like that. So I know that some of the time when Meghan says she wrote a letter, you think, and well, I think, like mummy, you know, she writes the letter knowing that she's going to drop you in the problem and exonerate herself. However, Meghan's subsequent behavior proves why it is imperative for royalty to marry only people who have the correct characters for the royal role. Until very recently, royalty only married royalty or aristocracy, because royals and aristocrats are brought up from the cradle to understand that there are certain things they do and other things they do not do. Now, I'm going to tell you, even narcissists, malignant narcissists, destructive narcissists, narcissists who will try to destroy the looks of their young daughters because they are jealous of the attention that their daughters are getting. Even they will not do some of the things that Meghan and Harry have done. Harry would never have done them on his own. So we can be absolutely sure that Harry is doing them under Meghan's influence and most likely liberated by Meghan. So I'm not letting Harry off the hook here, because Harry would not be doing some of the things that he's doing quite willingly with Meghan if he didn't really want to do them. Because I think one of the things that I gather they have in common is a massive streak of enviousness. And I make the point about that well-bred people don't do certain things, because no matter the terrible problems we had in our family, no matter how malignant my mother was, and I mean, trying to burn me on my face with a lighted cigarette when I'm 22 years old because Susie Knickerbocker said that I was one of the most beautiful girls in the world, I think really is right up there with true maliciousness. As long as my mother was alive, it would never have occurred to me to discuss any of this. And she, on the other hand, malignant narcissist though she was very careful not to denigrate me, my brother, my sisters, my father, or any member of the family to the general public. She might put her little nasty comments in privately and did it regularly. But if a newspaper rang her up, she was never ever going to betray any of us. And when we were growing up, my mother was in the social columns practically every week. So it's not as if to say that she didn't have the opportunity to put the boot in. But well-bred people simply don't behave like that. I will end this episode by making one salient observation. At no point in that Oprah interview did either Meghan or Harry accept responsibility for anything that had happened to them or anything they were doing. It was always somebody else's fault. And in the next episode, I will address the many distorted versions of fact that they tried to. I think Meghan and Harry are very adept at giving themselves a lot of rope. And I, in the next episode, will allow them to hang themselves with their own words. Thank you very much for listening. Please keep the questions coming in. Please, if you have enjoyed this, like, share, subscribe, and press the notification bell. Thank you very much.